Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Miranda and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. And I take you on a journey twice a week into the lands mystical and the lands of enchantment. And as it's October, finally, it is also into the lands of the creepy stuff, which, let's face it, I go there all the time anyway. So this Friday video, this Frightful Friday video, is going to be on a favorite of mine. We're going to talk some Edgar Allan Poe. Told you we would get to him. So, Edgar Allan Poe is, of course, the famous American Gothic master. And my cat is here, by the way. Her name is Harlow. Do you want to say hi to the internet? Oh, I guess not. But she's over there. She might pop in. All right. So, I do want to note again, I did decide to use natural light in this video. I'm liking the natural light better than an overhead light when I can use it, so I'm using it. So, specifically, the theme of today's video is Dead Beauties of Edgar Allan Poe. So, those of you who know Poe and know his repertoire of fiction know that he has a thing for a few different things that involve beautiful dead girls. He likes to write a tragic female figure who dies. He likes to write resurrection figures that are female. And he also likes to bury people inside walls and buried alive. It's a common concept. I think his fiction led to this trend of idealizing the dead girl that we see in a lot of modern media. And people have even said that, all of this, rekindling of talking about Marilyn Monroe and her mysterious death is, the dead girl trope. I love Marilyn Monroe. I'm a huge fan. If you do follow my blog, writersofAvalon.life, you may have seen I write quite a bit about her. And I even published a Femme Fatale Friday post on August 5th this year because it was the 60th anniversary of her death. And I went into my whole theory on what happened with her death because I've studied that case a lot. And I have very distinct beliefs in what happened then. I could link that into the description box below for you if you're at all interested. So, this whole idea of the dead girl concept, though, we see it repeated again and again when there was this beautiful girl who dies, and then it's all about trying to figure out what happened. We see it very prevalently in stuff like Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is all about trying to discover what happened to a dead girl. That is the basic premise of the entire show. It's an investigation trying to figure it out. I think it all started, though, with Poe. And some of my favorite Poe stories. I mean, we have dead girls coming up in Morella and Berenice and Lygia. Lygia, in fact, has that whole resurrection thing. I love that story. I love the resurrection arc. I love the fact that she was a witch and that, he's a guy who married a witch. How awesome is that? Real men would marry witches after all. Anyway, when it comes to the whole Poe and his fascination with dead and dying girls, I think it's partly just the age in which he lived. Poe lived in the Victorian period. There was a massive fascination with death in the Victorian period. And I've talked about it quite a bit, and I will talk about it till I'm actually dead. I will never stop talking about how awesome the Victorian obsession with death is. I think it's great. It's really fascinating. And this is born in a lot of ways from the fact that it was easy to die. I mean, certain things were spreading rampantly, like consumption. We call it tuberculosis today, but back in the Victorian period, it was called consumption. And it was a very romanticized way to go. In fact, it's the way that Edgar Allan Poe's wife went. Yeah, I'm going to talk about her a little bit. Virginia Clemm was Edgar Allan Poe's wife. She was also his cousin. We're going to move past that really quickly, though. I'm not getting into that debate. And yes, she was 13 when they got married. This was the Victorian age, though. People did get married very young, and her parents approved. We're moving past how weird that is to the modern age, to the modern ear. So, going on though, Virginia got sick and died very young, and it never really left Edgar Allan Poe that the woman he loved had been lost in this very, very tragic way. And beautiful young women dying in his stories is a very visceral and real way to talk about that, don't you think? Let me see. I'm going to turn to the page that has Annabel Lee, because Annabel Lee is a poem he wrote about the loss of his wife. So here we go. I'm just going to read the part specifically that is about her death. So, angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. That right there is him talking about losing her. And this was his way of mourning her, was this beautiful Gothic romantic poem that is still a favorite of many people. It's my top 3 favorite poems. Obviously, The Raven, Annabel Lee, and Lenore. Those are my favorite poems, if you're interested. What could be another reason for the interest in dead girls in his stories? I say it's Poe's take on the death in the maiden concept. Yes, I'm talking about it again. It's my channel. I could do what I want. So, Death in the Maiden is a artistic and literary motif that has a figure that personifies death and a figure that personifies a maiden, a human woman. And in these personifications, a lot of times it's a romance between death and the maiden itself. And all rooted back, most people say the first death in the maiden concept was Hades and Persephone themselves. But we see it in any time when we have a death-like figure paired off with a young woman. And we see it in one of my favorite books of all time, The Phantom of the Opera. Eric is death. Christine is the maiden. It's right there. And he even dresses as the Red Death, which again ties right into Poe. Yes, I could bring it back to Poe that easily because he dresses as the Red Death during the masquerade. Yeah. And we have it in the dichotomy between Dracula and Mina in Dracula. We have it in any romance between a vampire and a human, or a romance between a ghost and a human. We have stories like that too, like The Ghost of Mrs. Muir is one of them. Great movie, by the way. If you're interested in classic film, I recommend it. And we even, to some extent, can see it in works like Frankenstein. You know, the creature's obsession with getting someone who is like him, having a mate who is like him, because regular women run from him. That's a twist on Death and the Maiden. The Beauty and the Beast concept is a twist on Death and the Maiden. And we have tons of awesome artwork of women and skeletons, and it's very, very sexy and creepy and totally my jam. So there you go. I think that Poe's usage of dead and dying women is in fact just this continuation of the Death and the Maiden concept in art. And he uses it as the maiden is dying, or the maiden has died, and having that haunting aspect. And the fact that this dead maiden has become an obsession for his narrator of the tale. We see this very, very obviously in Ligeia, Her husband is obsessed with the fact that she's not really left him, and he couldn't care less about his new wife because his new wife is not Lygia. And he obsesses and obsesses and obsesses and uses more and more and more opium because he's an addict, which leads to the question over whether this supernatural event really happened or if it was just the addict's mind making it up for him. And we'll never know. Personally, he was an addict. Yes, he could have hallucinated, but no, I go supernatural all the time. Supernatural cause, she really came back. That's my belief. Again, I'm going to go with the supernatural explanation whenever I can. That's who I am, so yeah. But that is part of the romanticism. And it's also the romanticism of like dying young and leaving a beautiful corpse. And it was a real thing that happened very often in the Victorian age because women did die of consumption. I mean, men did too, but we have that image of the dying woman consumptive and withering away slowly. Women dying in childbirth was a big thing, and of course that was what took Catherine from Heathcliff in one of my other favorite novels, Wuthering Heights. We have these dying beauties in all of these formats. We have the story of poor Elizabeth Siddal dying due to her laudanum addiction, and then that story of her grave getting exhumed because her husband, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, wanted his notebook of poetry back. And he couldn't be there because he couldn't take it. He couldn't stomach her body being exhumed. But he gets told this tale of, oh, no, she didn't look to have decomposed at all, even though it had been like a couple years. She didn't decompose at all. She was beautiful, and the coffin was just completely filled with her red hair that had kept growing after her death. Again, Gothic romantic imagery. And again, that was the Victorian period that all happened in. So that is the fascination with dead beauties. That is Poe's fascination with dead beauties. And the buried alive thing, we see it with both men and women in his stories. It's a fear. It's a very, very innate fear of the time, especially because of diseases like consumption, where you might appear to be dead, but if you're buried too quickly, you might be buried alive and suffocate in a coffin. That's horrific stuff right there. And that's why some people asked to be buried with a ribbon tied around their wrist and a bell next to their gravesite, so that they could, if they would pull on this ribbon or the string, the bell would ring and they would know that the person isn't dead yet and they could dig them up. Yeah, it's a real thing. Look it up. It happened in the Victorian period a lot. So that is almost 15 minutes, and I'm going to bring this video to a close. I will link my Marilyn Monroe Death Femme Fatale Friday post and some of my Edgar Allan Poe-ish posts down in the description below, as well as the link to my Discord server. If you like what I do here, you will want to talk to me on Discord. Please do. And please like, comment, subscribe, and check out my blog at roseofavalon.life. Have a very fantastic, frightful Friday. Bye now.